Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Product-Led Growth webinar for 2020 from Event Growth. Today, we have with us Lindsey Allard, which will discuss everything you need to know in order to excel UX research. In details, the webinar's agenda will entail why UX research is imperative when SaaS organizations deliver a customer-centric approach, why should user research be driven both by quantitative and qualitative feedback, how to set your study questions based on your short and long-term objectives, and how to make good product decisions. Please note that you can write all your questions in the chat and they will be answered during our QA session in the end. Thank you all so much for joining, and let's welcome Lindsey.
Hi guys, I hope you can see my screen. I'm sharing now, but I'm the founder of PlaybookUX, and I'm excited to chat with you guys today. For those of you who don't know what PlaybookUX is, we're a software that helps automate the process of getting user feedback. So we get a lot of questions about, what is user feedback, what is user research, and how is that important in the product-led growth sphere. So that's why I'm excited to do this webinar and be a big part of what Reinvent Growth is trying to achieve and really leading the way in product-led growth. And I think UX and usability is a huge part of that, and that's what we're trying to do at PlaybookUX. So a lot of synergies. So I'll jump right in. But basically today we'll be going over, so this is the two of us on the webinar today. You guys already know that. I'm Lindsey and Despina just was speaking. So yeah, basically what the agenda today will look like, we're going to talk about why UX research is imperative, especially in SaaS organizations, and how we can help deliver a customer-centric approach. And then we're also going to talk about why user research should be driven by both qualitative and quantitative feedback and what the difference between quantitative and qualitative is, because I know there's always a lot of questions around that. Next, we'll talk about how to set study questions and objectives, because asking the right questions and asking unbiased, really insightful questions is half the battle. The feedback is, kind of the easier part, but really asking the right questions is so imperative. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then lastly, we'll just talk about how to make good product decisions, because, once you collect all this research, the question really is, how do you actually make good decisions behind that research or data that you've collected? So that's kind of what today's conversation will look like. So first, I think we could start with just what is user research? I think it can be a lot of things to a lot of different people. So I kind of wanted to level set and say, what we look at it as. And I think first it's all about getting feedback from the targeted demographic. And target demographic is really important because, if you're building the next Salesforce, you want to be speaking to sales managers, not a random person. And that's how we feel about it, is you really need to be speaking to that buyer, that customer, whoever's going to be actually using your product. Friends and families is always nice to get feedback from, but they have a little bit of bias and they want to make you happy and answer questions nicely. But you really want to get feedback from people actually using your software, your product. And you want to hear things that are resonating with them. So what makes them feel like a product is so user-friendly, so easy to use. I think one of the trends we've seen a lot in is, features are great, but ease of use is the thing that everyone kind of comes back with when they recommend a product. Oh, it's just so easy to use. It's so quick to get started. It's so simple to check out. That is kind of the driving behavior, and that's kind of where everything is trending, is just making things so simple and so easy to use. And so how you do that, you get feedback constantly and iteratively. Next, there's two types of kind of research. One is this quantitative research, which is more where you're looking for things like surveys, A/B testing. You're looking really for statistical significance. So in that case, you'll be having a large sample set of people, and you'll be asking them questions. But it's really, you're looking for a lot of responses. And there you're really using data to make decisions, right? You're saying, 68% of people want this, or 68%, 40% want this, and it's kind of very much based on the percentage and the data points. And then there's qualitative research. That's And that's actually what we focus on at PlaybookUX. It's all qualitative research. So that's where you're looking for feedback from 6 to 8 people, but you need to really make sure that those people are in your target demographic. And there's kind of a few main ways you can get that feedback. Mainly they're video based. So you can do unmoderated research, which is where you're actually setting a series of tasks or questions and you're recording the tester screen as they're kind of going through a prototype or going through the checkout flow or the sign-up process. And they're actually speaking out loud saying, oh, I really like this, or I don't like that. So it's much more behavioral kind of preferences, likes, and you'll actually see that kind of rich feedback. And the second way you can get qualitative research is interviews. So you maybe have a 30 or 60-minute interview where you talk one-on-one with someone. You can really dive into understanding, maybe who is that target demographic for you? What do they care about? Asking them what their day looks like, to really like create a persona. And then there's other types of qualitative research, but those are the kind of main two methods. And then lastly, like why is UX research important? I think that's a question that a lot of stakeholders like to ask. And I think there's kind of some pretty jarring stats here. I think one that I have on here is that, for every dollar invested in UX, it returns $2 to $100. So there is a really high return. And as you guys can imagine, having people come to your website or product, it's really hard to get them there. But to keep them, that's what everyone's goal is. And UX is what keeps them. Easy user experience, usability is on point. There's another stat that I reference a lot, which is 70% of online businesses actually fail due to bad usability. So when we look at like why businesses are failing, usability is high up there because people are just going to abandon something if they're frustrated with it. And I think that's a pretty common thing, is that people's expectations for a great experience is higher and higher. And so brands and companies really need to deliver on that. Yeah. And so then, kind of one thing that I want to mention too is like who should be performing researchers, who should be doing research. And I think that's really everyone from UX researchers to product managers to marketing managers. It's really about getting feedback. And, it's not just limited to one group of people. So on your marketing copy or your onboarding flow, there's so many parts along the journey that you can get feedback. And I outlined a couple here that I think really would resonate, with you guys about how we can, little bits of UX research can go a long way. So one of the tests that we see a lot of people take is they want to understand what people think about their product, their prototype, mobile app, website, their advertising copy, a new idea, or a new concept, or email subject line. So we have people actually testing like, will this person open this email? And I think those things are really important. And I have outlined here is a first impression test. And I think that's something we see a lot, right? Is when you get on a website, what's your first impression? Do you understand what your company is all about quickly? Like, does that make sense? Can you gather it in a few seconds? Because we know abandonment rates are high, but we don't want people to basically just go to your website, spend a few seconds on it, be confused, and leave. So you can see that from the data and the analytics, but what you can't understand and what you need from UX research is the why. Like, why are people leaving? Is it they're confused? Is it your price is too high? Is it because there's a million reasons that they could be leaving? And that's kind of what you can ask people with UX research. Another insight that's really popular is pricing model. So a lot of times pricing model is more of an art than a science. I want to check the chat. Yeah, sorry, I was just checking the chat here. It's more of an art than a science. So a lot of people will, especially in the software pricing world, margins are so high. So the question really becomes is, what do we focus on? How do we know if someone feels like this is a good value? A lot of times people will run tests with us, and it's so fascinating because people say, oh, I wouldn't pay that little. That seems almost scammy that you're charging so little. It's really a feel. Like, what do people feel they're getting value for? So you really can't get that unless you actually talk to people and hear them saying, yeah, okay, I understand your price. And I think that this is what I would pay for it. So you're kind of driving down that barrier. In most companies, especially software companies, you're going to see your pricing page is probably your second looked at page, just because that's what people want to know. How much does it cost? And then lastly is, how easy is it to sign up for your product? I think that's really important, right? Like, can they find a quick sign up button? Do they have to go through a million steps? Are they, dropping off at certain points? And why are they dropping off at certain points? And if you can convert a few more website visitors into signups, and then those people into paying customers, what would that do for your business? And so there's a lot of questions around, why are people dropping off? Why are people not signing up? So I think that those are the type of things that you can actually answer with research. Oops. Cool. So then I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about, like, how do people make good product decisions? And I think one of the things that is the first thing that needs to be addressed is, how do most companies make bad product decisions? I think there's a couple key main ingredients for making bad product decisions. One is that a lot of times people think, oh, well, I'm my user, so I don't need to do research. We know the user so well. We don't need to do research. And I think that's a kind of dangerous path. It is a leg up that you are your user. But even looking at myself, I was doing a lot of research before I started PlaybookUX. And I was my user. But once you start your company, or once you're the product manager or the UXer or the marketer, you're so in the weeds. It's so easy for you to understand everything that it's nearly impossible for you to pull yourself back and say, well, what would I think if I was just coming to this for the first time? So you're just so familiar, so ingrained with it. So, you're no longer your user. You're actually the one who's actually working on the product. You're not that user at that point. So you need to get feedback and opinion from people who aren't as familiar with it, who don't know quickly how to check out with your app or how to quickly sign up. Because of course you've done it a million times. It makes sense for you, but it doesn't for other people. One of the other ways that people make bad product decisions, and I see this all the time, is stakeholders are ones making decisions. And I think most of you probably experience this, where stakeholder says, this is what we need to build next, and you have so many other priorities, and you're trying to figure out, all right, well, how do I slot this in? How do I get to that? And I think answering that question with, well, what does the user want? And I think that's kind of a very quick way to get feedback. And what we see a lot of people use our platform for is getting quick feedback, and then showing that to stakeholders and saying, look, this is what users want, this is what they care about. Because again, to the you are not the user's point, stakeholders are also not the users. They're probably super far from actually using the software themselves, because they're so high up on the totem pole that it's hard for them to actually be the ones using the product every day in the way that a customer would. So, and then lastly is kind of defaulting to competitors. So I think a lot of people make decisions based on, oh, our competitor is doing this, and so we're going to do that. And it becomes like a feature race, and everyone who can build what faster. While that's really helpful, and I think getting competitor research, a lot of people do that with our product as well, and we do that all the time. Building what your competitors build isn't, you're not really understanding the why, and really understanding what's the most value. And I think, one of the best ways you can do that is actually by talking to your users. So I think we can kind of go into how you can make good product decisions. And like I was saying before, it's really about speaking to your users, and that's really the single best way you can do it. And once you hear that feedback and them saying, I'm really frustrated because I can't do this, or I really want this feature and this would make my life 10 times easier. That's what you want to prioritize. So hearing them actually say that, and then understanding or asking them why is that important to you? So when you guys are building those features, or you're designing them, or you're marketing those products, that's really what's important, is the why. Why do they care about that? How's that going to make your users or your clients' life so much better? And then, once you actually talk to them and you understand that why, it's, for the marketing team, it's a lot easier to market, because you understand, okay, you can talk to that pain point and say, well, here's how we solve it. Here's how we do it. And then, within talking to your users, I think a lot of people talk about, like, oh, you should do it. But I kind of wanted to dive into how you do that. And there's a couple of main ways. One is that you can speak to your current users. So you can reach out to your mailing list and say, I'd love to talk to you guys. You know, you can always use a software like ours to help automate that process, but you can do that, or you can reach out to people who have never heard of your product and kind of get feedback like that. Some people have been using their chatbots on their website, and it's just, you're incentivizing them, you're giving your users feedback, you're giving them monetary incentive just to give you their opinion, and people are more than willing to give your opinion. I think that's kind of one of the main things that we see a lot. A lot of times people find people through Slack groups or Facebook groups, or obviously through research agencies or softwares like ours. But I think the most common thing is that you're actually speaking to your core user, and that's really the main thing. And then lastly, how do you do that? And I think it's a synthesis process. So once you've spoken to your users, how do you collect all those videos and all that feedback and synthesize it into one nice prioritized list of features? And then it's a constantly reprioritizing and retesting and making the changes. And so we talk about that all the time, is just how do you do it quickly and how do you do it effectively? But I think one of the things that we love to always talk about is you test to see what people think. If let's say you're testing your sign up flow, test to see what people think. You make the changes, you test again, you make the changes, you test again. Research is not meant to be a one and done where you test and then you make the changes, because people have such interesting ways of using your product. And you'll always see that. Even the best, design, the best research process, you'll always have someone using your product that you never expected or you never intended. So, design and research is really meant to be, an iterative process and something that should constantly be involved and constantly being improved. So that's kind of, as a whole, the kind of iterative process of design, how research, how people conduct research, and all those things. I know, Despina, there's some questions. I'd be happy to answer those, kind of speak to any specific questions that people have.
Yes, of course. So the first question we have is regarding the feedback you get from your target demographics. If you can refer to any best practices when it comes to that. What if an organization actually has more than one target groups in one research that needs results from, and how it can actually optimize and streamline the results it gets?
Yeah, that's really a great question, because I think one of the things that we see a lot is people are like, oh, we have, especially with two-sided marketplaces or people who are targeting, different demographics. I think when you conduct a study or a test, you really want to do one study with one demographic, and then you can do the same study but do it with another demographic, and then compare the differences and understand who you're speaking to. So when I was talking about qualitative research, the 6 to 8 people that you want to get feedback from, those should all be one demographic. So let's say, one of your demographics is women who live in the Midwest and they are marketing managers. And then your other target demographic is women who live in Canada and are sales and operations managers. So you want to do one test with 6 to 8 people with the one in the Midwest, the first demographic, and then 6 to 8 with the second demographic. So you're getting enough people, and you're not basing your decisions based on 1 or 2 people in each demographic. So I think really like looking at that, and then a lot of people do kind of, I think, which is really interesting, is they do a baseline test. So they say, I'm gonna make a really broad demographic, and let's see who our product resonates with. So have them go through your product, your website, and then see what does that target demographic look like that is really resonating with your product or your website or app or your service, and then retest and do more with that type of demographic. So there's a lot of ways that you can get that feedback, but it really is important to break up the target demographics. And most companies don't just have one person they're going after. They have multiple different, some features resonate with some demographics, some features resonate with others. So really making sure you're speaking directly to the person, and testing the right thing with the right person is very important.
Great, thank you so much for that. So the second question we have is, you mentioned that for every $1 invested in UX, results is in return are from $2 to $100. So I guess our question here is, can you refer to some examples where where optimized UX skyrocketed growth in general?
Yeah, definitely. I have some good examples. One thing that I like to talk about a lot is ESPN. Actually, is a really interesting case study. They did a homepage redesign of their website and their all of their content and the layout. And from that, just redesign of their homepage, they had a 35% increase in revenue. So direct hit to the bottom line was their user experience and just making that easier to find, easier to navigate. I think Amazon is probably the best example, right? And people know how easy it is with the one click, right? The buttons are always in orange and bright and vibrant. They're super simple to find. So how making that process of seeing an item on Amazon and checking out and having it delivered, having that whole user experience process by reducing friction points, by reducing pain points along the way, that's been a huge increase in terms of their revenue. So a couple of the clients that we work with specifically, like we work with the American Cancer Society, and we helped them redesign their donations page. It was really hard to figure out how to donate, or it was just a long process to donate, and just from that they've been able to increase their donations, increase their signups. So just like, people get frustrated, people get dropped off if the process takes too long. They may have the best intentions, they may want to buy, but just reducing those friction points can really, really increase growth and, get them into that sales funnel, get them into that marketing funnel. Because when people are on your website, in your product, you want to make that the most seamless process that you possibly can.
Okay, the next question is a little bit in between onboarding, as always, and UX as well, and how those two interrelate. So what about the sign-up process? You mentioned earlier that it's one of the most imperative imperative processes to optimize during the journey. It's top of the funnel, of course, but the beginning is like half of everything. What you have first-hand experience on that? So, what would you advise organization to optimize UX UIs in order to get more signups that resonate with their users, perhaps even per user role or per customer segment? I don't know. How would you streamline that?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think the first part of doing that is starting with a level set and running a test, an unmoderated study where you have your target demographic, you get 6 to 8 people, and you say to them, all right, go through the process of signing up for this product, speak your thoughts out loud, sign up, get started, just walk me through that process and kind of taking them through step by step and hearing what their pain points are, seeing where they get frustrated, seeing where they click a lot and they can't find what they're looking for, and taking that feedback and then improving it, right? Is it from your website, people are expecting, I think one of the things that sign up and onboarding is really challenging is because people have expectations in their mind. And a lot of times when you run these tests, you uncover what's their expectation. They expected, I don't know, a tutorial, or they expected a demo project or a demo video, or they expected to be reached out by a salesperson. Every product's going to be different based on who your target demographic is, what your price point is. So I'm sure high price products, they expect a lot more white glove hand holding service. A lower end monthly subscription product, they're of course not going to expect to talk to anyone. But even within that, people in certain industries have just much different levels of expectations. So just uncovering what do people expect from that process, and then trying to meet those expectations as much as possible. So I think that first part of just level setting and understanding where you are and what the frustration points are is step one. Step two is obviously making those changes, getting that feedback, and then retesting it. So understand what people expect, understand what they're currently frustrated by, and then make the changes and retest and kind of keep going till you get people who are like, yep, this was super easy, no problem, I was able to get started, I didn't have an issue. And that's the feedback you want to hear, right? So kind of keep going until you've hit people have said, yes, this is stupid simple, I have no problem getting started. That's kind of the ultimate goal there.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that. The last question we have is about feedback. We referred earlier to how customer feedback is so important and how its synthesis and prioritization is like a whole new task for many organizations. I mean, there is just not enough feedback to consider if you think about it. Now that we are in the product-led growth era, how do you think we can optimize that, and when organizations should actually consider the feedback, or just, leave it outside of their considerations? I mean, not all feedback is, 100% the feedback internal teams need. Sometimes you need to actually focus on your product vision. So when do those two are compromised, or where do those two interline, I guess?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great question. So I think one of the things that we hear a lot from, especially like early stage companies, or really, really early stage, is people saying, all right, I'll get feedback once we've kind of built our product, or once we've done this, or once we've hit this milestone. And it's kind of an easy thing to push off, but the long-term repercussions of not getting feedback early and often is really high. And I think we've experienced this, most companies have experienced this. And I think one of the reasons that UX is so important is because getting feedback before you've designed or developed something, and you're just in the design phase or just in the idea phase, is a lot cheaper than developing a whole system, developing a whole product, realizing that people either don't like it, doesn't resonate with them, or the user experience is bad, and then we're having to redo everything, rather than being able to say, oh, okay, we built the initial part that people love, now let's build new features. You have to kind of start over. And I see a lot of people kind of coming to us at that point, which is great that they're coming to us and they're getting that feedback, but kind of from the beginning. So from a new concept, new idea, new feature, I think getting that feedback of understanding concept testing. Does this resonate with people? What do they want? So really understanding that first. And then once you understand that, you can start designing it. And then when you design it, you get the feedback again on the actual prototype, the product, and then testing again. I think research doesn't need to be that very expensive. It doesn't need to take that much time if you do it the right way. And of course, we're happy to help with that and make it streamlined and make its synthesis process easy. But waiting to do research has a really long-term repercussions. And, if you've ever kind of said, oh, I'm going to take a hunch on this, and it's big and it's an important feature, just asking 2 or 3 of your target demographics real quick what they think before jumping into something, you'll really thank yourself later, because, having all of your development team work on something to only realize that people don't understand what you're working on is a really challenging problem. So early and often, as much as you can. Like I said, it doesn't need to be, you don't have to have a whole team on it. You can just do it in a couple easy steps and just get feedback from a couple of people. It doesn't need to be 500 responses, doesn't need to be anything crazy, but getting that feedback is imperative.
And to organizations that are not actually invested in UX research, in UX feedback, in anything that has to do with user experience so much, because some organizations actually may not be able to afford it in the beginning. As you said, you don't need a lot of people, but maybe it's not in the priorities, because so many things can interalign when you have product delivery at play. What would you advise when they are, in the first steps of actually considering UX as part of their product delivery, as part of user experience in general? What would be the first steps you would advise them to take?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. So I think the first steps is really understanding what do you want to understand, right? So what kind of questions do you have that you need to have solved? So what are the main pain points? Is it you're having, we work with a lot of companies that come to us and say, okay, we have a ton of website visitors, a good amount of signups, but not a lot of people buying. So there's obviously something that's happening between people signing up and people buying. Or some companies say, okay, we have a really, really high refund rate, right? Or we have a really, really high, some sort of pain point that you're just not sure, you don't know why, and you want to uncover it. So I think identifying what is the biggest question that you don't have right now, and then you can start saying, okay, now let's look to test it. Who's our target demographic? But really, it's understanding the question that you want to ask. And I think just kind of, if you're like, I think one of the biggest challenge really is onboarding, sign up, pricing. Those are kind of the first impression. I would say that's one of the one I kind of addressed earlier, because those are probably some of the main questions that people come to and saying, yeah, people just don't understand my pricing model, or they just don't get, how to sign up, or they just don't get, when they do sign up, they don't understand what happens when they get into the product. And they're just dropping off, and, our, monthly active users is low because they're just kind of abandoning, and abandonment rate is high. So first, addressing what's the most important thing that you want to get feedback on, and then speak to 5 people. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to speak to 25 people. You can just speak to 5 people, but make sure they're in your target demographic. And then from there, you can kind of grow and get that feedback, and then you'll see the return on it if you can answer that really imperative question. If that's the question that's causing your company to lose a lot of revenue, or it's causing you guys a lot of stress or pain points, that's the place that you want to start, because you're going to see the highest return, right, on that feedback. So that's where I'd always kind of start, is really think about, what's that pain point for you.
Okay, I have a complementary question on that, but it's more actually on how to sell that internally, how to convince internal stakeholders, and by that I mostly mean management, that user experience is actually imperative for growth, because like it or not many organizations invest there, at least not in the beginning, or they don't prioritize it like first things first. This should be optimal. And now we are living in the era where competition is so increased. Customers actually can bounce from one product to another like nothing, because the switching costs are so low. So the product team needs to have some valid points when selling it internally. What would you advise any product team how they could achieve that with proof? I mean, what should they strive to do in order to prove that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the main things that we've actually written a few blog posts on the ROI of UX, because people kind of ask that exact question of like, how do I get buy-in? And, I think there's you can always instruct people, say this or say that. But the one thing that kind of without fail that actually does get people and management specifically to listen is if you can show them a video of someone going through a website or a product and saying, oh, this is really frustrating, or I cannot figure it out. When you see someone as a manager, as a stakeholder, and you see someone on your product and actually struggling and they can't figure it out, and they can't keep going, or they're like this, and you show them a little clip of someone saying, I really don't understand this, they're going to see the value, right? Because then there's almost a fear at that point of like, oh, this one person's on our website, how many more people are experiencing this? Oh, we have to fix this problem, because they're actually seeing it. And that's kind of why at PlaybookUX, we've really broken down the barriers of cost for this type of research. So for $49, you can do one participant and get feedback, and actually get a video out there. And that's usually what I tell people, is if you just do one video, show management what that looks like, they'll kind of have the fear, right? Oh no, if this person's thinking that, well, so many more people must be thinking it. And I think there's nothing more powerful than actually showing that feedback, showing that video. Like I said, it doesn't need to be 20 people. It could be one person, and that's it. And then they can say, okay, yeah, I see the value in this. I mean, there's always, I think kind of talking to about the people who do UX really well, like Amazon, right? Or these ESPN and how they've got those. There's always these stats, and we publish a lot of them, and I think they help, but nothing really speaks better than actually seeing someone struggling. And if you can't get the buy-in for the $49 one person, we have videos of people going through Medium's website and they're like, they can't find what they're looking for. And Medium is known as one of the best UX companies, but people still struggle and they still can't find it. So I think even if you show them some videos like that, because I think there's nothing more powerful than seeing that. And because people don't know that, right? When you have a product, you don't know what someone's doing on your website. You're blind to that. So when you can actually hear that person saying something that's useful or insightful, you can quickly make that change. You can quickly make the update. So I think as much as you can, either show them, do one video, or show them a video of someone going through a very, there's all these videos out there and we have plenty of them. But as much as you can, as show not tell, I think is the best way to do it.
Okay, one last question, because I think we have exhausted you. Okay, getting the internal buy-in from stakeholders is one thing. Assuming that you are there, that you have gained that, and you want to actually conduct research internally. I mean, have the employees actually evaluate how the experience is. Is there a methodology where you can train internally employees, users, team members, whatever you want to say it, so that they can actually give feedback that it's extended and detailed on the matter? Because I guess that big organizations do that already before a big launch, but smaller organizations are not there yet. So what are the points they should notice? What are the pain points they should address? How they should actually give feedback internally on that?
Yeah, I think it all depends on the organization. One of the things that we did that really helped us kind of from the beginning is we had chat set up in our website and our product. And so for customer support, we constantly use the feedback we got. People were saying, oh, well, I can't find this, or I'm looking for this. And, we look every opportunity that someone asks a question on our chat and ask our customer support as that's a product feature or something that we didn't build as it should be so obvious that they shouldn't need to ask that question. So we would quickly make the change, and then we would track to see how many people are getting that, are asking that question again. So that was like a way that we used customer support and customer service as a way for getting feedback for free. I mean, we looked at it as any question that people were asking, whether it be, oh, how do I change my name in the of my participant, whatever they wanted to ask, even if it was seemingly obscure. As our goal is to have people not need to ask any questions to us as customer support. So it was free feedback, we felt like, and we could quickly make those changes. So for us, we said every question was routed from customer support and need to be told to product. If there was a question and someone was struggling to find something or do something, or they had a question, we would review it, and we have the product team review it, and then we would make that change very quickly. We did that from the beginning, and I think that was really what helped improve our user experience. On top of course, testing the way we test and everything like that. We really looked at that as, instantly question comes in, we route it to the product team, and not just the customer support team would answer the question, but the product team would say, okay, how do we change that? How do we fix that? And the marketing team as well, because some things people just didn't know on our website. They couldn't understand our pricing. And then we said, okay, well, we need to fix that. So I think that's a quick thing, because customer support, and we did that with sales as well. The sales team, myself included, I looked at every question that we were getting on a sales demo and a sales call as an opportunity to route that to the product team and say, all right, people are asking for this feature. And I was tracking every time we would get feedback from the sales team, we were tracking that and saying, this is what people were looking for. So when we made product decisions, we had the feedback from the customer support team, from the sales team, from marketing, from all these different departments, because those are ones that are often in the front lines. Sales and customer support specifically probably spend the most time talking to users. So how do you, making sure there's a very simple and easy way that they can quickly give feedback to the product team. I think Slack is a great resource for that. We have a channel that's set up in our product that's just customer feedback, and it's a constant Slack channel where every salesperson, every customer service person, every person is just giving feedback quickly. And I think that that's one of the best things you can do is have the people who talk to the user the most be, it can't be siloed. It has to be a very, and helpful feedback, no matter how small, no matter how big the questions are, they should be taken as seriously.
Lindsey, thank you so much for joining today and for all the useful instructions. Thank you all so much for joining as well. And don't forget to join us in the next Product-Led Growth webinar with Jump Cloud, where we're going to analyze their product-led growth strategy along with their framework and how that extends to their partner network. Have a nice evening.
All right. Have a great evening, guys. Thank you.